My name is Pete Griffin. I work with the Tongass National Forest and the Forest Service at the Juneau Ranger District, and I'm a 35-year employee of the Forest Service, coming up on retirement this summer. But I've spent pretty close to a lifetime of fishing and hunting and rambling through the woods and bird watching and just making observations of the natural world and in some cases comparing and contrasting with the world we inhabit and people's habits. In my office, there's a black and white photo under glass, and it's a photo taken back in, gosh, I think sometime in the 1970s using that old technology of film. Some of you may not be real familiar with it, but it's a photograph of a friend of mine, and he's at the tiller of an old wooden outboard boat. And there's a gray lake behind him with white caps. He's covered with ice from head to toe. His Jones-style duck hunting cap, his Fu Manchu mustache is coated with ice. His jacket is coated with ice. And what had got us to that position is we had been deer hunting in northern Lake Michigan, or excuse me, northern Lake Huron, and we were coming back to the mainland to go back to our work or draw an unemployment check. And we had taken off a little earlier that day. The wind was up. We thought, well, we can make it. We got a wooden boat, no problem. We took off, and we're heading into the wind, about a 25-mile-an-hour wind. And we got out a little bit further from shore. We had, oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 miles to go. And the boat was starting to ice up. It was well below freezing. Spray was freezing on us, and we were starting to plunge. The boat was full of decoys from duck season and our camping gear and our rifles. And about a half hour out, we took a nosedive into a wave, and there was green water both sides of the bow. And we looked at each other and we said, we can't go any further. It was going to be really difficult to turn around too, because the boat was wallowing in the trough. And it was that point I thought, you know, we really made a stupid choice. But we eventually got the boat turned around, and we made it back to the shore of the island where we'd been staying. And some of our friends who had stayed to hunt a little while longer met us on the shore and helped drag us out of the boat and drag the boat up on shore. And we went up to our cabin and had coffee, and we're going, boy, we were lucky. And a friend of mine said something that I've never forgotten. He said, you know, he said, some people will spend thousands of dollars racing boats, racing cars, skydiving to risk their lives. Hell, we do it for almost free. And I thought, you know, for the longest time, I thought that's what separates us from the animals. Now, I've thought that for years. I graduated with a degree in wildlife biology back at Lake Superior State College back in Upper Michigan a long time ago. And I was taught that anthropomorphism was bad. Don't imbue animals with your own emotions. Animals do things because it's the right thing to do for them, because it will help them survive or reproduce or protect their young, or protect their home, or gain food. Those are the motivating factors for wild animals, nothing else. Well, fast forward to this century, and in fact, to a place probably just a couple hundred yards away from here. I think I was waiting for somebody to get out of a class, and I was up in the parking lot looking out over the lake, and I saw an eagle flying overhead, just soaring. I thought, oh gosh, what a wonderful place. And then a raven from above came down and attacked, swooped down on his back, eagle, oh gee. And the raven took off and got up above, and he swooped down on the eagle again. And I thought, well, the ravens, the whole crow family, they just hate raptors, getting that eagle the heck out of there. And I watched as they continued to cross the lake. The raven would swoop down, and then the eagle, at the last second, turned upside down, thrust its claws at the raven, and the raven overshot its mark, and all of a sudden the eagle had the height advantage and was behind the raven. And I thought, well, Mr. Raven is going to get the heck out of Dodge now. The eagle swooped down on the raven dodged him. The eagle swooped down on the raven again, the raven got away, and the raven ended up higher and behind. And I thought, well, Raven is going to take off. Now he's going to get out of Dodge. And he didn't. He swooped down on the eagle again, and I was wondering, what genetic advantage is this action having for the raven? I mean, for the eagle, it's a nuisance. For the raven, this is a matter of life and death. And for the longest time, I wondered about that. And I started thinking maybe a little bit differently about animals and wildlife. Not that I'm going to tell you that ravens are addicted to adrenaline rushes. I'm not sure that's the case. But sometimes there are some things that are inexplicable, and I will grant you that. I still think it's wrong to anthropomorphize, but I think it's good to sometimes wonder about animals and the way they conduct themselves in the wild. Thank you. One of the more interesting challenges I've faced in Juneau over the last few years is my relationship with beavers on the forest, and it's a relationship that I've learned a lot from. In fact, I have a talk I give to other Forest Service employees entitled "Everything I Know About Leadership I Learned from Beavers." So for this story, I want to take you back a ways, back to the end of the Little Ice Age, about 250 years ago, when the Mendenhall Valley was at its southernmost extension, right about the Back Loop Road, and the climate started warming, the glacier started retreating, leaving behind kind of a rolling plain of gravel and rock and blocks of ice that turned into kettle hole ponds. Eventually, little streams, gravel-bottom streams, stitched those kettle hole ponds together. And the fireweed seed blew in, and the willow seed blew in, and the cottonwood blew in. And eventually, the area became revegetated. And the salmon found the streams, and the beaver found the streams, and the wolves and the bears, they all moved in too. And eventually, people moved in. And flat land being what it is, so rare and valuable, that people moved in. And the area became a recreation area, nice and flat trails. It was wonderful. It was a gravel source, just a wonderful area. And then there came conflicts. Hunting was ended, trapping was ended. The beaver population grew, and they started plugging culverts on the trails and the roads and blocking the spawning areas so the salmon couldn't get upstream, and flooding the trails, and people complained, and people were scratching their head, and the Forest Service going, well. And into this situation rode the forest ranger, me. Not on horseback, but in a 1992 Dodge minivan. And being a professional wildlife biologist, I knew exactly what to do. I was trained for this kind of stuff. So I talked to my staff and I said, I want a beaver management plan. Now I want you to explore some alternatives. And the alternatives I want you to explore are trapping the beavers out, live trapping the beavers and transplanting them someplace else. And because I'm a sensitive new age kind of guy, I said, I want you to look at beaver birth control too. But the thing is that it can't cost the Forest Service any money, whatever we do. So of course, my staff worked it up, came up with a plan, and it was exactly what I thought it would be. Because I'd known the answer all along. We were going to trap the beavers out, at least in certain important areas. We're going to wipe them out. We're way beyond that. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore. But some of those colonies were going to be history. So because the area was closed to trapping, we needed a permit from the state in order to do this. And of course, we walked into the state and said, we'd like a permit to lethally trap beavers. Well, there was a new governor in town. He didn't like the Forest Service. And it was about Christmas Eve back in 2002, I think it was. And he said, you know, Forest Service, I hope you treat this family of furry little loggers a lot better than the government agencies have treated some families of southeast loggers here the last 10 years. And we did not get our permit. So we said, well, let's try live trapping. And we tried live trapping, and it wasn't very successful. I think we trapped 3 beavers at the cost of about $1,500 a piece, moved them out the road, and I know they met their end in a terrible manner. That's just the way that stuff works. So we tried for years. We would pull the sticks from the culverts, and we would pull the sticks from the dams, trying to keep the trails dry and the spawning areas open to the spawning salmon, and keeping the roads from blowing out when the culverts got plugged. And eventually, a miracle happened. The governor, who didn't like the Forest Service much and apparently loved beavers, came in third in his own party's primary for governor. And I thought, wow, this is really neat. So the new governor came into office. We went and got our permit to lethally trap beavers. And hokey smokes, it was, well, the hue and the cry was just amazing. I got phone calls, there were letters to the editor. A pretty small but vocal and very articulate minority said, this is wrong. You shouldn't be killing animals just because they do things you don't like. And I kind of go, oh, yeah. Well, what do you think? So we had a meeting, and I got to tell you, you know, I'm a bureaucrat. If you don't know what to do, have a meeting. It gives you some time. It buys you some time. So at this meeting, I said, well, I'll tell you what. If you will grant that I have a responsibility for keeping the culverts clear, for keeping the spawning areas open, for keeping the trails dry, I will concede that it is wrong to kill an animal just because you don't like what it does. And they said, yeah, okay, we'll grant that. So then I asked the question, what could we do that would satisfy my concerns and satisfy your concerns? And the group said, can you give us a week? And I said, okay. And in a week, that group went out and they came back with a plan. Now, it was a plan that would keep the culverts clear, keep the trails dry, keep the spawning areas open, and not kill any beavers. They came up with a volunteer group, a volunteer effort to do the work that we had been doing all these years. And I said, that works for me. We'll play it a year at a time. If at the end of the year, the trails have been kept dry, the culverts have been kept clear, and the area is open to spawning salmon, we'll go for another year. And by golly, that's what those folks did. It was a tremendous effort. Didn't cost the Forest Service any money. Although eventually we gave in a little bit when good ideas came up and we said, well, you know, we need a bigger culvert in this place. Yeah, we can do that. So I learned a couple of things out of this whole episode. The first one was that if you run for statewide office in the state of Alaska, you'd better not be soft on beavers. The second thing I learned, is that sometimes leadership in natural resource management doesn't mean coming to the right answer as quickly as you can. Sometimes it's a matter of asking the question, what can we do that'll meet my objectives and meet your objectives as well? God, it took 35 years to learn that, but I've got it now. Thank you.